Hello, and welcome to the annual meeting of the new champions here in Dalian, China, where we are discussing inclusive growth in the fourth industrial revolution. Today, we will be talking about a specific aspect of the fourth industrial revolution, which is our technology pioneers. We've got 3 of them presented here today, but there are 30 in total that are selected to be our class of 2017 technology pioneers. These are companies that work on technology and innovation that are poised to make a positive impact on the world with their innovations. We're going to be having a conversation with our 3 technology pioneers. Welcome to all of you. And we'll be talking about where they're from and what they do, what issues they actually tackle, which societal and business issues they tackle, and why they're around now and not 5 years ago. Many of you have not been around 5 years ago, and what you expect your technology will do in the future. So without further ado, I want to quickly introduce from my left to my right, your right to your left, Nobu Okada from Astroscale.
Yes.
Then we have Paul Ellis from Electron. Welcome. And then finally, David Perry from Indigo Agriculture. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank you very much.
Absolutely, thank you for being here. And let's kick it off immediately with you, Nobu. Could you tell us where you're from and what you do?
Our company, Astroscale, is Singapore-based, and we have offices in Tokyo and UK. What we do is we are developing technologies to remove space debris. So space debris is a huge issue in the space industry, but not only space industry, but also the ordinary people. The density of the space debris has reached a critical level that the debris starting to colliding each other and the chain reactions happening, so that space is not sustainable anymore.
Yep, thank you. And we'll get back to you in just a minute. I want to first introduce also the other 2 technology pioneers. Paul, you represent Electron, and where are you from and what do you do?
I'm from London, and we have only one office, which is in London. We were incorporated about 18 months ago, so it's a very early stage company. We focus on blockchain for the energy sector. We think that there's some huge opportunities for inefficiencies to be taken out of that market and for cost savings to be gathered by the existing parties. So we're heavily involved in developing various proof of concepts at the moment, and we're looking forward to taking those into full-scale production in a year or so's time.
Fantastic. So blockchain that we previously saw, of course, in the financial sector, now being applied in the energy sector. We'll also get back to you, and then we'll meet first David, our final technology pioneer represented here today from Indigo Agriculture. So that gives me a hint of what you do. Indigo, where are you from and what do you do?
It's true. Indigo Agriculture is an agriculture-based company. We're based in Boston, Massachusetts, in the United States. And we're applying cutting-edge microbiology to increase yields in agriculture, increase productivity, while changing out a lot of the technologies that are used in agriculture today, including chemical insecticides, chemical fungicides, and chemical fertilizers.
Yeah. So the 3 of you work on very different challenges, some on this earth and some extraterrestrial. So let's talk a bit more about your company, Astroscale, because what societal or business challenge do you tackle if you work out of space?
Well, yeah, over the last 6 years, people have littered the satellites, rocket upper stages into the space. And that amount of the debris have accumulated to the critical level. And we have to remove them. The biggest challenge for business is 3 things. One is business model, who pays money to remove them. The 2 is technology, how to capture the debris, which flies very fast, much faster than bullet. The 3rd is regulations. It's very complex for regulation. So we've been tackling on that, and we found a way how to solve this.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. And I wonder what enables what you do now. How come you're able to do that now and you weren't able, because I believe in 2013 you were founded. So what enables you to do that now versus 5 years ago?
I think, thank you for that question. I think the many trends came together. The one is the cost of the launching is, coming down, and downsizing of satellites is happening, and the density of the space debris is getting the critical level, and people are getting aware of, oh, space is not sustainable anymore. And I think these kind of all the trend, just combine together, and that's why we are.
That's a combination of awareness, people being aware about this problem, and on the other hand, technology enabling now to do something about it. Now we are in 2017. Where do you expect to be with the company, and especially also with this challenge, let's say 5 or 10 years down the line?
We're going to launch the first satellite quite soon, and we
this year still, or?
Well, we're not supposed to tell, but quite soon from Russia, and also we are going to have a full demonstration in near future. And you can't believe us, but over the by 2030, we will have 3 outposts in space: the ISS, Moon, Mars, and there will be the commuting spacecraft. And we have to secure the spaceflight safeties. To do that, we have to clean up the space to avoid the collisions.
Yeah, so that's maybe in 5 or 10 years we'll have a space that is not littered as much as it is today.
I do hope so, and that's our job.
Yeah, okay, let's see, and we'll meet again in 5 or 10 years then to make the counts. Second of all, of course, Paul, you are working on the blockchain. We know blockchain primarily, or many people do, from the financial sector, and now we see it in the energy sector. Could you tell us a little bit more about why you apply this in the energy sector, and what that means for the society or the business that you operate in?
Well, the energy sector is every bit as big as the financial sector. And the problems and the inefficiencies in many cases run just as deep, and therefore so do the opportunities. We see a wide range of opportunities, but I think one of the more interesting ones and early stage ones that we're currently focused on looks at the registration of something very simple, which is the meters and other renewable assets. Right now we use central intermediaries to handle this. That is not necessarily an efficient way of doing it, partly because the central intermediary has vested interests that are 180 degrees diametrically opposed to the users of those platforms, but also they extract value from it. So a central platform which can be run on a blockchain will save money. It'll be faster and cheaper to operate. It provides more extensibility and opportunity for innovation. And importantly, it gives us the opportunity to incentivize parties on a blockchain to keep the data clean. One of the biggest problems that we have is that the data itself is not kept clean because there are no incentives to do so.
What do you mean with clean data in the energy sector? Could you clarify?
Well, a meter being registered to the wrong person, the meter supply number being inaccurate, trying to switch meters which can't be switched unless they're switched together. All of these things cause something like 1 in 20 of all the switches between suppliers in the UK to fail. And that's a very costly problem for the industry, and one which we believe can be solved in part by introducing the appropriate incentives. And blockchain is a really good way to do that.
Yeah. So if I understand well, for the consumer, for us who have to pay a bill every month for our energy, you expect the blockchain actually to make that bill, or potentially make that bill, lower?
Well, ultimately, yes, because what it's doing is it's lowering the cost of the participants. It's making it easier, for example, to switch. But there are many other applications of blockchain. Fundamentally, the advantage comes down in many cases to the data that sits behind it, to access to that data, the quality of that data, and the incentives around that data. So that fundamentally is what blockchain is solving by removing this central intermediary.
Yeah. A better quality of data, so that means that the benefits are both for businesses operating in the energy sector and of course the clients. I won't be getting a wrong bill anymore, which is already a good thing in itself.
Correct, and the right incentives for everyone who's using the system.
Yeah, so that leads us now to 5 years from now, 10 years from now. First of all, when do you expect these changes to take place? And secondly, will that mean that in 5 years' time we'll all pay half our energy bill, or we'll just get the correct bill? What is the vision that you have for the future?
Well, we think by 2020, a platform such as this could be rolled out and operational. certainly in the UK and possibly in other countries as well.
Yeah, so that's 3 years from now in your home country of the UK. Is there any reason to assume why that would not be possible, let's say, in the next 5 years in countries around the world, including, for example, China or Asia?
None whatsoever. It depends on the incentives within the country. I think everything is slightly different. Energy is quite a geographically specific product, so you have to make changes depending on where you are. But there's no good reason why not. The technology is there now that allows us to do this.
Yeah, you mentioned it's quite a geographically bound sector, the energy sector, and we know that, of course, typically national players still in liberalized markets, including the European Union. Do you expect the blockchain to change anything about that? Will we see more cross-border energy suppliers?
Well, of course, we're already seeing interconnectors across Europe and elsewhere, and so we already have that. Whether or not, or how that will extend to, for example, registration, which is the example I gave, I think that's a matter of time and a matter for the regulators in the different countries. But it's certainly something which I think we're on a trajectory to accomplish that.
Yeah.
So yes, I think 5 years from now, I think we could see a number of countries having rolled this out and benefiting as a result.
Final question for you. Another trend that we see in the energy sector is that it gets decentralized. That there is more generation closer to the customer. Is blockchain helping in that regard too?
It is, in different ways. There are various projects that are currently going on peer-to-peer and community energy trading, and we're certainly involved in a couple of those. But there are other opportunities, I think, from the top down, where large companies involved in demand-side response transactions could benefit hugely from the transparency and the collaborative approach that a blockchain can take to that sector.
Yeah, okay, as well for you. We'll be looking forward to meeting you again in 5 years. Finally, David, I want to get to you. Indigo Agriculture, you told us a little bit about yourself. Could you tell us more about the challenge that you tackle with Indigo?
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned, Indigo is harnessing microbiology, the microbes that evolved over hundreds of millions of years to be symbiotic with plants. And the potential benefit of that is really threefold. One is we need to increase the productivity of agriculture. Right now, the food demands of the population are growing faster than agricultural productivity is. And so by 20 or 40 or 2050, we're going to have to significantly increase agricultural production in order to meet those needs. The second is that the means by which we got our existing agricultural production are arguably neither good for us nor good for the planet. So swapping out those technologies, even as we seek greater productivity, is important. And then a third fundamental challenge is farmer profitability. About 40% of the world population is engaged in either growing or preparing our food, and a large number of those live below the poverty line. So we can only really think about sustainability of agriculture if we think about sustainability of economic sustainability of farming. And we're hoping to address all three of those.
Yeah. In which geographies are you most active? You, of course, come from the US. Does your technology apply in great farming regions as Latin America, Africa, etc.?
It does. Obviously, agriculture is a worldwide business. We're based in the U.S., and that's been our primary focus thus far. And we're currently on several 100,000 acres of farmland in the United States. But this year, we're expanding into a South American country and Australia, and we expect to continue that expansion over the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. That's fantastic. You mentioned that the reason why you are in existence or why you're necessary, the challenge that you tackle, is actually the fact that food demand is rising faster than the availability of food, and also that a lot of farmers live below the poverty line. Yeah. Of course, those problems aren't new. In that sense, I would have hoped that such a company would have existed 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or at least 5 years ago. Why are you existing now and not 5 years ago?
That's a good question. So while what we do in theory is really simple, we identify microbes from nature and add them back to agricultural crops. Actually doing that is very technically challenging. There may be 1 trillion microbes that could be beneficial, and if you have to test every one of them, that's sort of an infinitely long problem. So the technique that allows us to do it is the combination of DNA sequencing and computing power. So we sequence tens of thousands, ultimately hundreds of thousands of microbes, put those sequences into a database and use algorithms and machine learning to predict which microbes might be effective, essentially dramatically shrinking the problem. The cost of DNA sequencing for a bacteria 3 or 4 years ago was about $1,000. Today it's about $10. So that plunging cost is really what enables us to exist.
Yeah. We see this happening across the three companies, that technology today is much more advanced than it was 5 years ago. This has been going on for a number of decades, of course. It's known as the Moore's Law. Some people are wondering whether that Moore's Law is coming to an end, and whether these great progresses that you make, whether they will still last in the future. Do you want to comment on that? Do you think that's going to continue, and anyone can pick in?
Well, DNA sequence, so Moore's Law says that computing power will double every 12 to 18 months. DNA sequencing is actually improving about 5 times Moore's Law. So,
So that means that it advances 5 times as fast as the advancements of technology in general.
Of processing
chips,
technology. So, that dramatic advance enables businesses that literally couldn't have existed 2 or 3 years ago, and that creates all sorts of opportunity for people who are focused in this area.
Yeah, well, I'm going to get back to you in just a second, but I want to know if the same is true for the other 2 companies that are here. Do you expect the pace of technology that you work with to continue at the same level, to increase or to decrease in the coming years? Let's hear from you.
I think certainly in the case of blockchain, Moore's Law obviously applies to computing. I think, I don't know what the equivalent would be on a blockchain, but we're seeing a huge amount of innovation taking place, moving from proof of work to proof of stake, building in zero-knowledge proofs that allow privacy in smart contracts, state channels that allow vast amounts of transactions to be transacted on a blockchain, and things like sharding, which gives us much better capability to handle vast amounts of data. So all of these things are in the pipeline at various stages of completion, but they're all coming.
Yeah, so no end to progress in the blockchain either. Let's look at Astroscale and space. What's next? Of course, the moon was next 50 years ago. Now we're already much farther ahead. And I even heard that there were rumors that life has been discovered somewhere on another planet recently, very secretive. So what do you expect? Are you going to clean up also the space in planets far, far away in the future?
So answering that question, I think I should tell the big trend in the space industry. So space was more government-oriented and difficult, far away from ordinary people. But now its trend is coming down to the private sector-oriented, and the downsizing and less money is okay, capital is there. Yeah. So more and more private sector are joining the space industry. And that's good, and that's why we have an opportunity. Regarding a space debris issue, space agencies have worked on the concept, some R&D, but they have politics. Also, they have annual budgeting process.
That's right.
And that they are not fast. So that's why there's a room for private sector to accelerate providing solution by global procurement, globally finding the key talent and capital we can get anywhere in the world. So I think that give us a chance. So answering your question, space is a new frontier, and I'm sure more and more people will join the space industry. And space industry is always 50 to 60 years behind airline industry. So I think we'll see more and more people will be working on the space industry.
Yeah, one question I had for you before we go back to Indigo. We typically see not just the government taking charge of space exploration, but also big countries. We've seen Russia and US in the past, now also China, of course, and India and Europe. You're from Singapore, your company's from Singapore, and you yourself, I think, were educated in Tokyo. How come you're active from Singapore? What's the reason that such a small country is able to make contributions to space exploration and debris removal?
Well, I can't tell you the smart story about it because I had running my previous company in Singapore, covering the Southeast Asia. But Singapore is the best country because Singapore is a neutral country. Yeah. The more than 90% of the space debris comes from Russia, US, China. So we have to serve to these countries, Singapore is in the right location.
Yeah, so that basically means that you can serve all three major customers because you come from a small country, which is an interesting concept, of course. The technology pioneers, depending on which sector they're from, can come from any country. We typically know, of course, technology pioneers from Silicon Valley. That's where a lot of startups come from. You yourself are not from Silicon Valley. You are from the US. You're from Boston. Could you tell us a little bit more about why Boston?
Sure. Well, so technology innovation, happens. It's not bounded by geography, obviously. Boston specifically is really good at innovation in life sciences, and at our core, Indigo is a life sciences business. We need to be really good at molecular biology, cell biology, computational biology, molecular biology, and that talent exists in Boston, probably more densely and numerously than anywhere else in the world. So that's the reason our headquarters is in Boston.
Yeah, and so that works for you, and that's good to know. Our final company is from the UK. It's a bit of a devious question, perhaps. So we asked to everyone, where do you expect to be in 5 years? Do you expect to be in the UK in 5 years?
Well, I'd say not just. So I'd very much like to have a few outposts. Yeah.
Yeah, and then let's end again with that question for you. In 5 years, where do you expect the world to be? Where do you expect you to be? And what is your contribution to that world in 5 years?
Well, in 5 years, we won't be done with the challenge of reinventing agriculture, but we should be well on our way. And I think we've got the opportunity over the next 10 or 20 years to replace 90% of the chemical insecticides used today, 90% of the chemical fungicides used today, and probably as much as half of the chemical fertilizer used today.
Yeah. So I would say a bright future ahead of us for all of us. I want to thank you now for being here today at least, to have the technology pioneers here. There's 27 more technology pioneers selected by the World Economic Forum this year. You can find them on wef.ch/tech pioneers. You can find all about the technology pioneers. They come from all over the world, including from China and different countries across the world. You can also watch this press conference after we're done here on our webcast, weforum.org. Thank you again, all of you, for being here, and have a good day from Dalian, China.